Welcome back to Reborn, the Resurgence series. So last week we talked a little bit about burnout. We got kind of our feet wet with it, talked about a little bit of the experience that we personally have had. And today I want to kind of go more in depth about it, but in a different version. Last week we talked about more of, the burnouts of work, the added tasks on hand, FOMO, which I just learned, fear of missing out. I remember that term for today's topic.
Yeah.
But I want to go more now on the burnouts and the home lifestyle, and I feel like there are those variations that you have, for moms that are stay-at-home parents, moms, dads, whoever it is. I mean, watching their kids constantly, that's a whole job in itself.
Yep.
And then there's other varieties. I mean, like what we talked about, kids with sports, like that parent continuously taking them here, there.
Yep.
And they get their exhaustion, their fatigue as well. So I kind of wanted to recap that because I feel like burnout at home could be very critical also because it could impact the relationship that they could have with their spouse, family members, even their kids.
Yeah. Well, let's what do you call it? The warning label on this is that don't try to fix your whole marriage by our discussion because there's so many idiosyncrasies in this. This is just our being able to discuss it. Maybe it'll trigger something, but I was listening to that video and I'm getting divorced. No, don't do that.
Yeah,
right?
Warning labels all around here, but at the same time,
let's think through this. Yeah,
this is something that y'all are adults, y'all are teenagers, y'all are your own individual kind, and you know what is right and what is wrong. And what we're here discussing is just a variation of what we may have experienced, trials, stories that we could relate towards.
Right. And
you as the viewer can make your own adult judgment based off of those. And don't say that we're the ones deciding for you.
No.
We never will do that.
This is not meant to diagnose anything.
We're not Dr. Phil. What were you thinking?
What were you doing?
But
so anyway, so that I think we talked last time about the kids and you're taking them everywhere, and I think that many times we associate quantity with quality.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with my kids all weekend. Yeah, but you're watching them play games, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're running to the next thing, and there's no time when you're sitting and talking and interacting on spiritual level, on a life lessons, which could be both.
To me, that would be more of a support system when, and I get it because I love watching my daughter play basketball and stuff, and you're supporting them in their hobbies and whatever they want to do. But now where you're relating towards, now you got to also do the other half of it.
One is we think that there's quality in the quantity, number one. And number two, marriages forget, and I've seen this time and time again, that husband and wives spend so much time, on the weekend, and they'll say this, and you're standing there, oh, we're out with our kids all the time. What they need to say is we're separated all weekend because they're going and I'm going, but we never see each other. And I like to emphasize, now, keep in mind, I'm looking at this in regards to a nuclear family, not the families, there's a lot of different animals, different variations of families that exist today. So, but a man and woman get married and then they have children. You got to keep them. The marriage was first, right? And when as much as we love our kids, I hate to refer back to an old Bill Cosby. I brought you in this world, I can take you out. Me and Mama's going to be here when you guys are gone, and so I got to have the relationship with Mama now, and not let that relationship go away or get disconnected, because what happens is that at the end of 18 years or 20 years,
you see that
you got an empty nest and you got
house.
two strangers in your house.
Yeah.
And you go, well, and then the sad part of the dangerous part of this, well, I talked the wife will say, well, I talked to Bob over there when we're watching the kids, and I'm talking to Nancy over here when, and it's like, you built relationships outside of that marriage and you didn't even know you're doing it. Right. And but then that wrecks the marriage, right? Because something that was God ordained at the beginning, hopefully, has gotten broken up, not because it wasn't right. It's just got to grow. The same relationship. I was listening to a pastor talk in the last couple of days. Last time, Thursday, when he was working out, and he said, and I like this analogy. Our Christian walk is like walking up a down escalator. Okay, you can move up, but there's no stopping.
Yeah.
When you stop, it moves you back down. Mm-hmm. Same thing is true in the marriage. I mean, really, any relationship, any intimate relationship you're trying to get into with God, Christ, or your spouse, there's no stop. It starts to move backwards. Well, I spent all summer, taking kids around so that we could bond with our kids. You probably didn't. You were just really a chauffeur for the kids for that. But there was no. The only time the husband and the wife are talking is when it's like, okay, you take them here. You sound like you're doing a football strategy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you go left and cut down.
You're gonna cut right here.
Yeah, and we'll meet over here and have lunch, and then we'll back out again.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no building of that, and when it starts revolving around just the kids and not around the couple themselves, that's dangerous later on. It can be dangerous now because those relationships with the opposite sex, when the husband's out watching this game and the wife's out watching that game, there's a danger there.
And viewers are probably wondering, well, now we're talking more into the marital aspect instead of the burnout. But I feel like this is
part of it. This
is exactly right. This is actually part of it because if you think about it, what happens to a person when they're physically exhausted and they don't get to encounter and interact and have that relationship with their significant other or their kids? I mean, in general, they're spending their energy somewhere else.
Right.
And how else do you spend your energy? By having a relationship and communicating with other people and voicing like, oh yeah, we did this and this, and then by the time you're all done with that and you bring it back home, you're already such in a mental exhaustion.
Yep.
Like your brain is so fried that now you're sitting across the table from your kids and your family, and you're just like, I want this night done with. It's long day.
I need a quiet place.
Yeah. Now
absolutely
your significant other right across the table is like, well, how was your day? Or how did it go? And you're like, I don't want to talk. I'm beat up. I'm worn out.
Yeah. And when you think that the husband and the wife have two different ways of communicating, and a lot of,
which is 100% true.
Yeah. And I've heard people say that, the husband, he's got, 50,000 words a day, and the wife has 100,000 words a day.
Mm-hmm.
Just making the numbers up. So by the time we get home, we've used our 50,000 words and we're done. And she hasn't started yet because all of her words have been around kids talking.
Yeah.
And so she wants to share with you the 75,000 words, and you're going, I'm done. So we have to get past that.
Yeah.
We have to get past that. But when we think about what we're trying to teach our kids, we want to teach our kids. We want to, get them involved in sports and all this. Everything could be music, band. It could be the sports. It could be drama clubs. Things. Any of those things. Any of those things fall into this.
We're not
picking on any one thing,
just because
except soccer. But we're not picking on. We're not picking on anything else.
That was just
soccer.
Blow.
But the other piece that the parents forget that they've got to train their kids, their little boys and their little girls, is what's a good marriage look like.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
More importantly, is how is a happy family supposed to be?
Right.
And
right.
What amazes me is I know I've had opportunities in VBS and stuff where I've talked to a couple kids and they'll tell me about every single sport that they have done and everything. And by the end of the week, one kid particularly, to this day, always stuck out like a sore thumb. I mean, he wore me out, but he was a blast at the same time. He just had so much energy.
Mm-hmm.
But by the end of the week, the kid comes up to me, he's like, "You've given me so much attention," and he said, "I'm grateful for that." And I'm like, "Well, of course, but I was like, but at that time, I'm thinking like, your parents take you out and everything." He's like, "Yeah, they watch me and play and everything, but then we go home and then I go straight to my room."
Right.
It's like I don't get to talk to my parents like I want to.
And you got video games are doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, technically they do because I mean they're stuck staring at a screen all day. I can't say too much because used to play video games all the time. But it's true. You're focused in on that one thing, and you isolate yourself from everything else.
Yeah, I think just for some food for thought is the husband and wife got to remain the husband and wife, and they've got they've got to be able to make time for each other, to be able to talk or do, talk, go to a movie, dinner and a movie, things like that. They've got to continue to date. They got to do that. Why? Because your kids are watching you. And I always told my kids too. It's like, if you want to debate with me on something I'm telling you, you're welcome to debate. But when mom tells you to do something, there's no debate. You better have it done. Right? Yeah. Matter of fact, you better be on your way to doing it before she gets it out of her mouth.
As a kid,
but they knew that. But they knew that there was no playing mom against dad, because that was a bad thing. Because dad's always, well, did mom tell you to do this? Yeah. Then why are we talking?
See, right? As a kid, I learned the system really quickly because my dad was always like, if he always says, did you ask your mom? And I go, no. He's like, you need to ask your mom. But if I say, hey, mom told me to come to you first, use that phrase. Yeah. And then he goes, oh, I don't care. Then I knew, it was like, that's my ticket to go with my friends. Like, I knew.
Now, did she say that?
Not to that extent. So I can say that.
You can confess it now, right?
There's some gaslighting in there right now that it's been overdue. And if my mom's watching, now you know. About 80% of it.
Yeah. Next time you see her, just duck.
Right, yeah. My mom's not afraid to throw hands, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
That Latin player.
That's those are the bigger picture of this whole thing is, why are we here? Mm-hmm. We're here to glorify God.
Yes, ultimately.
The ultimate best for us is the relationship that we have with God. Every other relationship that we have it branches off of that. You have the relationship with God, then in your relationship with your husband, the husband and wife, is a picture of Christ and His church. Mm-hmm. How much does the husband love his wife the way Christ loved His church and gave His life for it? What do I do for my wife? I give my life for her. Mm-hmm. And we learn in Deuteronomy chapter 6 about, and this is where we get into quantity versus quality, is that it tells us that we're to teach our kids, the parents are, the primary Bible teacher in the family should be the dad and the mom, mm-hmm. not the pastor, youth pastor, children's church pastor.
So we're going to go ahead and let Brother Ed take a moment and leave the room since it...
Yeah, but that job belongs to them. Now, how does this work? Well, God uses the pastor, the teachers to teach the parents teach the kids. But it's not just, here's the Bible verse or here's the Bible stories book and let's read that before we go to bed. It's like when we're sitting there and we're waiting. So let's talk about, you know what? I remember when I would, I think I mentioned this before, when I was at work, when I was working, I'd get bonuses. And I'd come back to the house and I'd sit the kids down and I go, I want you to know that you said, we got a good bonus. And we got a good bonus because God is good, mm-hmm. not because your dad is smart, and I made that clear to them. So they would see that moving forward, in their lives. They can say, well, Dad did it on his own. Dad never took credit for any of this. It was always God did this.
Because we do that in our household too. Whenever, like, if my wife got a promotion or if I received a promotion, we actually would explain it to our daughter and everything, and she's incredibly smart and everything. We tell her, like, I didn't just get to this level because I'm doing what I need to do. Of course I'm doing that, but it's because of God's grace.
God. Yeah.
God's
hands is in
our life, and
much that we don't.
And that's something in a lot of families, and here's where it becomes challenging, especially when you're in that fatigue state. Mm-hmm. Because like we always talked about in many episodes in Godcast and in personal, it's an endurance-based event. I mean, you're in it for the long haul, no matter what, when you're working for God. Yeah. Like, your day of rest is the day that you get to take your last breath, as we joke.
Yeah.
But it's true, too. It's true. Mm-hmm. And Like I was mentioning earlier and stuff, like with the past episode, like, taking on Reborn. It's another job, another amount of hours. But my daughter sees what I'm working with and what I'm trying to do. And what's
Yeah.
cool is that she actually will ask me, "Is like, oh, did you get any new subscribers? Did you get
Oh,
any more
good. See,
reviews?" Like,
yeah.
she sees that and like the amount of work that I'm doing, and she'll
Hmm.
actually even ask questions about what's my episode about, what are you going to talk about, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And she's even made suggestions, which when she does, I listen 100% because even if I'm so tired, she wants to talk about God. She wants to talk
Hmm.
about what she thinks someone should be mentioning and maybe helps that one person.
Yeah.
And I told you earlier, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it on for the viewers. My daughter, here's my God moment, is the fact that we were on our way home from school. I picked her up and we were talking, and out of nowhere, I mean, out of nowhere, she goes, not many kids get Pokemon cards or sports cards or anything like that. I was like, no, you're right. So, and I hope they one day when your card game comes out, a lot of kids get it. And I was like, yeah, me too. And she goes, maybe what we should do is ask people to donate their old cards, and what we do is go to like hospitals and stuff. And she came up with all of this on her own. I'm
Uh-huh.
telling you right now, there's
Yeah.
no gaslighting. You make a little pack of cards, you put a memory verse on it, you put my Reborn sticker on it, and we hand it out to the kids at the hospital.
Yeah.
When she said all that, I was like, my jaw dropped. I had goosebumps, and the fact that it's like, what made you really come up with ideas? Like, you always talk about how a lot of families don't have the opportunities and don't get the blessings like many other families do.
Hmm.
So that many parents don't get to buy their kids Pokemon cards
Wow.
or sports cards or baseball
Yeah.
cards, and I want to have people who have too many donate to us so we can give it to those kids. I'm like, wow,
Yep.
like this is coming from a 7-year old,
Hmm. That's
and
good.
and know that even how burnt out you are, those kids will mimic
Yeah.
you. They might have energy for days and hours and moments, and that's what these things are for us. But
That's why God invented coffee.
coffee and energy drinks.
Coffee and energy drinks.
But
Yeah.
those kids learn so much because of actions.
Yeah.
Actions is exactly what they say. Action speaks louder than words.
Hmm.
And when those kids notices those actions, they see what's right from it and they see what's wrong from it.
Yeah.
And no matter what physical state that you think you're in, you got to make sure you do that +1 because they are going to want to make sure they make you proud and make God proud.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned burnout, and I've heard burnout, and people talk about burnout and burned out and burned out, burned out, and I'm not sure I always understand it because there's that when you're doing a job and in repetitive,
Mm-hmm.
in that I could in and I think the burnout may also have to do with you just being overwhelmed by so much and it never seems to end.
Yes.
I remember one time we were doing this is a long time ago when I worked in print operations back when I was still in Kansas actually, and I was doing print operations and they go, every day we create these stacks of paper, and then the next day stacks of paper, and the next day stacks of paper,
All
and
I can
it
think of
just
is The Office right now.
365 days a year, stacks of paper, and you're cutting it up and you're giving it to the same people. It's kind of like a mailman, right?
I was about to say, have you ever watched The Office?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm picturing you working there
Just
now. Just every day, the same thing that they deal with
Yeah.
is the same thing every time.
And the guy I was talking to, he says,
Dwight?
no, it wasn't Dwight. His name was Ted. But he said, if you build a house, you can drive by that house later. You build a house for somebody, in your construction, and you can drive by that and go, there, finished product, there, finished product, there, finished product. He says, us every day, it starts over,
Mm-hmm.
and so that can get pretty monotonous if you're not making things change.
Mm-hmm.
That the burnout comes, it's just over and over and over, and I say, well, I wonder how Moses felt, because of all of his exploits that we read about, that wasn't most of his 40 years. Most of his 40 years was, can you imagine every day you get up and somebody's wanting to have a judgment, and there's a line, and you look just back at the line and go, oh gosh, here we go again. here we go again. But when it changes, when we go, wait a second, I'm doing this for the glory of God, and I'm trying to, when I'm talking to that person, I'm trying to show them some aspect of Christ. All of a sudden, that monotonous job, it's not the DMV anymore. It's all of a sudden now, how do I express?
Mm-hmm.
How do I show Christ in the everyday? Because the same people that don't believe in God will claim that miracles occur. It's like, how does that happen? But we talk about those miracles and this miracle, and I just don't see that. Well, what are you doing?
Right.
Is my because every time you come in contact with another person, you have an opportunity. Something's going to be different.
Yeah.
Right. Because things are always different from point in time to point in time, and so you have that. But at the same time, I always say, you can, if you catch me once on something, it's not hard to catch me on something I don't know, but you catch me on something I don't know, which is vast and broad, that's okay, but not again.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to find out. I'm going to learn. So when I come back, I can have that conversation.
Okay.
Especially with somebody that's not saved.
Right.
When we're talking about apologetics, I think catch on something, but how do I get them to a new place? I think that's part of where you get past the burnout.
Right. And I'm
where
hoping,
you can get past it.
Where you can get it, of course. And then hopefully the viewers back at home and everything while y'all are watching this, you need to also make sure, we talked a little bit about is the overstimulation. Like here's your factors of how many things can create that burnout mentality, right? Am I doing too much on the weekends?
Too many irons in the fire.
Right.
Yep.
Do I have too many hobbies that I want to focus on? Do I have too many, there's so many varieties of things that could just take an impact towards that person. And what I would honestly suggest, and this isn't a diagnosis whatsoever, is do a reevaluation. Take a step back and check out what your week prior that made you feel that way, and then reevaluate your following week.
Right.
Here's our FOMO moment right here. What am I fear of missing out? Is there anything in there that I can actually say, this really we don't need no more, and that could gain the many hours?
If the burnout's because you
got so much
in a little bit of time, that's the stress. Sometimes the burnout's just the opposite. I'm getting burned out because I'm doing the same thing.
And that's one thing. And then you got the repetitive burnout, which is
remember the other movie? This is my stapler.
What was that
one? What was that one? Office Space. Office Space. Yeah. It's my stapler.
The coffee, I could really use that by Friday. But, so you have the overstimulation, and then you have
overwork. It's really
overwork. And then on the other side of the world, you have living the same Groundhog Day. You ever watch that?
Oh, gosh, no. Yes.
But it's just
no.
You wake up every day and it's like the same thing happening over and over.
What did he do?
He started changing things. And it made a difference in his life. Yeah. And that's how it's something you can really look at.
Yeah, I think the story in that, once they finally get to it, because after a while you get it, it's like, okay, how many more times are we going to?
Right.
But when you get to it, you go, the day changed when he changed his life.
Exactly.
Changed his attitude, changed his heart, changed what he did, changed what he knew. Right? Learned to play the piano, if I remember right.
I think so. But here's our parallel moment that goes with the Groundhog Day is the fact that if you're in that state of mind and everything, what do you think you might be missing out on that you really should be having in your life that could change everything? Could it be God?
Yeah.
Do you count on him at all during that week that you're doing the same thing over and over and over? Do you ever mention about him once, twice?
Yep.
Or do you do the whole I'm clocking in at this time and I clock out at this time moments?
Yep.
And then it just turns into your Groundhog Day that you're repeating every single day, which then turns into a stalemate.
Yeah. Olympic athletes, especially sprinters, Olympic athletes, and there's an old Jerry Seinfeld.
Before we go into that, let me go ahead and I'm thinking we're kind of really close to
time.
Our time moment, and I think that would be pretty fun to talk to adding another episode to the series.
Okay.
But I'm going to go ahead and save that for now. Make sure you follow and like, subscribe. With Reborn, we're doing great. I got a milestone today. I have 50 subscribers. To me, that's a blessing. 50. Let's double to 100 now. and maybe we can do something fun with the 100. We'll do like a big green screen with like we're skydiving. We'll have the fans on blast. But like always in the Holy Dome, 2 are in, 1 is out, and we'll catch you next.